So we are here for a episode of the Allan Miles Show. Welcome and thank you for joining me. Formerly the Money Mindset and Marketing Podcast is now named the Allan Miles Show after myself. Today we're going to talk a little bit about client acquisition, or put another way, the prospect journey. So this is going to be literally a brain dump of the things that we have seen that work incredibly well inside of coaching businesses, agencies, and offline businesses who are looking to acquire more customers and don't currently have a consistent pipeline when it comes to client conversions. So we're going to break this down into a few different steps. So if you haven't already, press pause, go get a pen and paper and a drink, sit yourself down. We're going to be here for 20 minutes or so, and we're going to really break this down with some actionable steps that you can go and implement into your business today. Before I dive into it, if you ever want to reach out to us, you can reach me on Instagram. Simply just put my name in, ALLANMILES, Allan Miles, and I will pop up. Alternatively, go to our website, allanmiles.com, and you can reach me on all my social channels or directly on email there. And if you really want my email address, it's allan@allanmiles.com. Just make sure you spell Allan correctly, because a lot of people unfortunately spell it incorrectly. So let's dive into this, the prospect journey and client acquisition. The first point we want is, presuming you already have some clients, we want data. We need to collect data, not just for the sake of it, but for an actual purpose. If you don't have data, you've never tracked anything, you've never had any clients, anything like that, then you are going to have to make some assumptions to start off with. You're going to need to do a bit of research into your competitors to understand what you can see by the marketplace. But we're going to go down the route. I'm going to presume you have clients. And you've had clients who you would consider to be ideal clients, and probably along the way, some other clients that you would consider to be unideal clients you don't really want any more of. So first of all, we want to break these down. We want to have three different levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3. For most people, this is not going to be a new experience, having to understand the level 1 data. So understanding the age range of your ideal client, the types of jobs or companies your ideal clients run, their core beliefs, those types of things. It's a very standard avatar worksheet type thing. If you've ever worked with a coach before, that's the information they always get you to collect first of all. And that's helpful, but it doesn't really help you understand where to find your clients. It just gives you some very floaty idea of who they are and starts to give you a couple of buckets to categorize them in. It doesn't really give you anything more than that. The next thing that we want to look at is level 2 data. Level 2 data is really about behaviors. So it's about understanding in the lead up to when they, before they became a client of yours, what behavior did they display? How many messages did you need to send on average before somebody became a client? How many pieces of content did they engage with? What types of pieces of content did they engage with? What types of things were they saying that is consistently showing up as a pattern in conversations, on a sales call, in the DMs, in comments? Looking at things like their purchasing behavior, not just with yourself, but also what kind of things have they purchased before? Because what we're looking to do is look to build a distinct list and some key benchmarks that we know that if a prospect starts to tick these boxes, the more of these boxes they tick, the higher the likelihood they're going to become a client. That means that you're not filling your calendar with calls that aren't going to convert. And even if you are, you understand when these calls will be likely to convert, because there's a couple of different ways to approach sales. It doesn't have to be a case of the person buys at the earliest opportunity. Some people perform best by getting people on the call 2, 3, 4 times. It depends on the value of your offer, the length of your buying cycle. It's about understanding what is converting clients for you consistently right now, because once we can convert clients consistently and we can find the right people consistently, then we can start to optimize it. There is no point trying to optimize something that doesn't work. And the final part of this is level 3 data. So understanding the pains that your ideal client has. And when I say pains, I don't mean the big problem that your program solves. I mean the little thing that to you might seem insignificant, but to your client or potential client, it's in the way. Like, it's the thing that's stopping them from moving forward. So in the weight loss niche, this could be something as simple as helping to overcome motivational issues, helping to understand how many calories I should eat, helping to understand how and where, how frequently should I exercise, helping business owners to understand how to optimize their Instagram. These things might not be the main area that you help people with, but they are the thing that your ideal client is preoccupied by at this moment in time. And if you fix this thing for them, that will create a massive change for them, and it will really help to give them clarity, certainty, because that's all we're really asking when we get into this buying cycle is how can I present my prospect a level of certainty of an outcome? Well, the way that you help a prospect to understand that there is a good chance that you can help them get to an outcome is by providing them an outcome beforehand. Like, demonstrating track record is obviously important, but I think in the world that we live in now, there are so many testimonials out there, so many case studies that, yes, that's a nice thing to have, and it's something that dots the I's and crosses the T's, so to speak, but actually getting in there and helping somebody fix the problems they have right now is what's going to move this relationship forward. So once we have all of this data, that then allows us to start to map out the actual process itself in a bit more depth. So the first part of this is understanding your entry point. The one difference that I see between bigger companies and smaller companies who are really struggling to attract prospects consistently that convert is they have multiple entry points. So a big company will traditionally have one main entry point at any one time. And yes, this might change over time and they might go through a cycle. So for example, they might have certain times of year where they're promoting and driving people to a different event or a different thing. But generally speaking, a company should be driving people through one front door. It's a lot easier to check and count and monitor the people coming in the front door than it is having 15 different doors and having to check all of them all of the time. We want to understand, and this is where having an understanding of that pain that you can solve for people becomes so important, because this is a principle. Like, if you understand that you need to solve the pains, the tactics become less of a issue. Sometimes you might deliver it in a challenge. Sometimes you might use a webinar. Sometimes you might use a call. Sometimes you might use a Loom video, whatever it might be. If you understand the principle is I have to solve this pain for somebody, what's the best method to resolve that pain? And that's going to fluctuate depending on the industry, depending on the season, depending on all kinds of different things. But the principle doesn't change, just the tactic does. So the entry point remains stable. And we now understand that when somebody comes in this front door, we have enough data to understand, hopefully from what we've collected, what needs to happen next, because that takes us to the nurture process. And nurture processes can vary in length. Generally speaking, industry-wide, we kind of like online world and sales worldwide, we kind of see that it's somewhere between 5 and 12 touch points before somebody is in a place where they generally feel enough know, like, and trust, unless you can expedite that journey. So we're going to play to the worst case scenario. We need to make sure we have a nurture process that is 12 steps deep. Whether they consume all of those steps is a different matter. This needs to be a range of things from messages, content, email sequences, lead magnets, calls, and obviously one of those calls will be where you're closing them. So it's about really starting to build that process. Now, 12 steps sounds like a lot, but doesn't have to be. So here are a couple of different ways you could approach your nurture process, depending on the data. So this is always going to be client specific. So as in like business to business specific, like just because somebody is in the same industry as you, one thing will work for them. It doesn't automatically guarantee that that thing is going to work for you. And that's what makes business such an amazing thing, is that the principle or the pattern of behavior is the same, but the actual way you get there doesn't have to be identical. Racing drivers are a great example of this. Yes, there is a racing line on most racetracks, but if you look at most Formula One drivers, they all have a slightly different racing line that they see for optimal performance. So it's about understanding these fundamentals, but don't feel that you are rigidly stuck in this framework, because you might be able to have a 5-step nurture sequence. Other people are going to need 12. So just take some of this, take the information in, and start to then test, because we have to create a hypothesis from this process to be like, I think this is the process that will convert clients for me more often than not, meaning above 50% of the time. Then we put that hypothesis to the test. When we see the result is true, then great, we can move to an optimization phase and start to look at then time buyback so that you can systemize this process to step away from it. You don't have to manhandle it yourself. If you test that hypothesis and you're actually seeing that you're converting people under 50% of the time, and it still doesn't seem very predictable, well, then you have to go back into the machine and you have to change a few of those cogs until you start to get that predictability. So the nurture process, you could look at this from a couple of different ways. If you're in an industry where sales and DMs are considered, and cold calls and those kind of things are considered fine, people don't mind them as long as you're value-based, hit those hard. You can do 12 DM messages pretty quickly to somebody inside of a conversation, which gets you to 12 touch points. It's a very, very simple way to get there. End of the day, it doesn't need to be complicated. A slightly more complex way of doing this, or a way to kind of start to double your chances of improving that conversion rate, because people will communicate with you best when they are in a place that they feel like is their home. So their home platform. So you might have a conversation with somebody on Instagram and not really get much information out of them. The moment you move it to email, they open up fully. The moment you move it to a call, they open up fully. The moment you move it to LinkedIn, they open up, or maybe they clam up, whatever it might be. So we need to understand what their home, like where they consider to be home. And that will vary from client to client. So nurture process, you could look at it like this. They come in the front door, they get that entry point. You solve that first pain. You give them a lead magnet. Essentially, we're going to do a traditional thing. We're going to exchange an email address for the lead magnet. Not really a big deal here, fairly low friction point. At that point, you then want to start a 6 or 7 step email sequence. It can be a very straightforward email sequence, just focusing on some basics, understanding who you are, what you do, why you do it, how you learned it, who you help, and how you can help people like them. There's your 6 emails. That I went through that too quick. Go back, listen to this again, and get those topics written down. These emails do not need to be perfect pieces of copy. Yes, over time, we want to improve them. We want to make sure that they build trust, and we want to make sure that it conveys your story in a good way. But to start with, it's about getting these blocks in place, and then we can go back and refine each one of these separate processes as time goes on. Stop trying to perfect everything before you've launched anything. We want to get things launched. We want to get things running. We want to start to collect data, and then we can start to refine things, because there's no point refining things if we don't know the data. So person's come in, they've got the lead magnet. We've collected an email address. Very important to build your list so that you're not solely reliant on social media or people walking in if you're doing this off of social media. At that point, they're going to start to receive those 6 emails or 7 emails if you added another one. So 6 emails. They're now at a minimum of 7 touch points. 6 emails plus 1 message is 7. Now might be a poignant moment to present a value-based call to them, or offer them a different lead magnet, or ask for feedback on what they thought of the first lead magnet so you can provide them another one, or so that you can take them to a triage call and present something that's valuable. That's really our personal approach. I like to get in front of people as soon as possible. And that's something that allows me to build that connection 10 times faster, is getting in front of people. Yes, that takes time. Yes, that's only scalable to a certain point before you need more people to do it. But it is in my opinion, the best way to get sales is to truly help people as much as possible. Getting somebody to show up on a call is a high friction task, even if you're solving a pain point, which means that you've immediately increased the likelihood that they will be in a place where they will be wanting to purchase either now or in the near term, rather than it being a one day, maybe I could, should type thing. So at this point, we now have messages going out, we have emails going out, we potentially have calls. We then now turn to our content. Our content at the beginning of this journey, we don't need to be going viral. Yes, it would be fantastic if we went viral. However, it isn't needed. It isn't mandatory. You don't need to rely on content. You need your content to do one thing: show that you know what the hell you're talking about. That's it. You just need your content to show people that you are credible, that you have knowledge, that you can help move people forward. And then over time, you can improve your content, you can improve your messaging, and then you start to build your audience. So at this point, we have content now dripping out to people because we're in a conversation with them. They're going to start to see a few bits. Now we are getting close to that 12 touch point mark. Now we need to look at what are the conversion points in this nurture process and what is going to be our extended nurture process if they display signs that they are just not in a place to buy in the near term. Like if they are going to be a long-term nurture, which a large chunk of your audience will be, normally about 40% or more of your audience will be long-term nurture. Now, a lot of people, they just ignore that portion of their audience. Well, by not ignoring that portion of your audience, you immediately push yourself up that likelihood of converting those people. But you have to make sure that that extended nurture is consistent. Reaching out to somebody once every 6 months, you're probably going to miss the boat because you're trying to remain top of mind. You're trying to remain in a place where your audience are like, this person speaks to me a lot. Like they offer me a lot of value. I've never even done anything, but I've actually implemented a few of their things. I have had success, but I've never purchased anything from them. I think I'm getting ready to need X, Y, and Z. I'm going to speak to this person. And those sales become some of the easiest sales because essentially you've spent a long time building a relationship with that person and asking for nothing at any point. You're just there serving them. You're serving your audience like you're meant to. Because if you serve, the law of reciprocity by its mere nature returns itself. This is why the data is so important, because people get so hung up on, does my audience have the money, or my audience is broke, no one will ever buy from me. Well, look at the data. Are you talking to people who are clearly broke, who are never going to be able to afford your offer? They have to buy something. So that audience obviously don't need whatever it is you're selling at the price you're selling it. So you have to serve them something different if you want to work with that marketplace. This is why it's important to have that data to understand your ideal client and your unideal client. What are the differences that show up in that data? Because then you spend more time focusing on headhunting the people for your audience that you want in your audience, and you spend less time inviting people or dealing with people in your audience that don't have the things that you need them to have to be able to purchase. So now we have in place our entry point. We now understand our nurture process. We now have some extended nurture in place. I would recommend once you get above 12 touch points with somebody, if they're still nowhere near buying, they still seem very, very cold, they have no interest in really talking to you on a call or anything like that, that point is the moment to move them to extended nurture. And that's more than likely going to be every 2 weeks to every 4 weeks that you're going to be reaching out to them with something valuable. Could be a podcast, could be a newsletter, could be a touching base message, could be anything. Like, get creative and make sure it's value based. Don't just keep tapping them on the shoulder being like, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Like an annoying child in the back of a car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Doesn't add value. You become a nuisance. Like following up with somebody shouldn't be a I want something from you type process. Following up with somebody should come from a place of wanting to understand, like a friend, how are you doing? Like, what are you struggling with at the minute? How can I help you? And that's a company ethos we have. Every interaction we have is focused around that simple sentence. How can I help you? What can I do that is going to truly help you? Not how can I give you the minimum amount of value so you buy something from me? No, how can I give you the maximal amount of value that I know if you were to consume and implement all of this, you would have success, because I care more about helping to move people forward and believe that the people who are meant to work with me will rise to the surface like the cream on the top. That's how we approach business from an abundance standpoint. So now we have our conversion points. These conversion points have to be those moments where you present an opportunity to somebody to be able to ask, how do I work with you? What is it that you do? And you want it to come from them more so than having to come from you, because if it comes from them, they give you permission to sell. And it means that they have given you the indicator that they're ready. If they're not giving you an indicator, well, one of two things is happening. Either number one, they're not ready, or number two, you aren't giving them the opportunity. So at the end, as an example, at the end of that first call, when you've provided them with a load of value, simply just asking sometimes, is there anything else that I can help you with right now? You haven't pitched, you haven't told them anything about what you do program wise, which is what anyone else would do. They would start pitching. They would be trying to use that value call as the moment to start selling. By simply saying, is there anything else I can help you with? You should already know the next words that are going to come out of that prospect's mouth. What is it that you do? How is it that you help people? Or in an ideal world, this has been incredible. How do I work with you? You just got permission to sell. In those situations, you can do one or two things. Personally, I always move it to a second call. I keep that first call completely clean because I made a promise when they booked that call that there'd be no sales on that call. So I book another call, even if it's just for the next day, to talk about things in more depth. So that first call is a very tight timed call so that I don't have that ability to actually start to sell to them, because you need to, in my opinion, you just need to remain disciplined to your process. A bit like if you were going out on a first date, if you really like the person that you were going on a date with, I'm a traditionalist. For me, it would be a case of, even if she invited me back in, I'd be like, no, let's meet up again tomorrow. Let's meet up again in a couple of days. Let's see how we go. Like, yes, you're potentially missing something in that moment, but it's for the long-term gain. You build curiosity, you build a mass level of respect, and you show your true colors of someone who does actually care, not somebody who is pretending to care. And that's the real difference. If you don't actually care and you just want the sales at the earliest possible moment at whatever cost, then go ahead and sell on that call. From my personal opinion, that just isn't how I like to run my process. I like those calls. If I say to somebody it's going to be value-based and that is it, then that's all we do. And then on the next call, I set the tone for that next call. When I book it in at the end of that first call, presuming they want to know more about what we do, I make it clear to them that we're going to be talking through how we can help them over the next 3, 6, or 12 months. And we'll make sure that by the end of that call, even if they decide that it isn't right for them, they'll have another couple of clear steps to move forward with. The stage is set at that point. So you have that conversion point, and you then want to have inside of your extended nurture a couple of other conversion moments. So if they haven't already converted, how else can we loop them back round? This might be that you have a webinar that you run periodically. This might be that you have a challenge that you run periodically. This might be that you run a Facebook Live once a month where you provide a masterclass and then have something to sell at the end of it. Like, whatever it might be, you just need to map out a couple of extra conversion points inside of that process. And that's how I would approach the front end sales side. So at this point, we now have this full circuit, and I would document each one of these stages, have it like a flow chart so that you understand people are coming in at this point. We need to make sure that they go through X, Y, and Z. At that point, we know the certainty of them converting is going to be X% higher than if we just take them straight off the top. There will always be exceptions to the rule. We're not trying to optimize for the exception. We're trying to optimize for the everyday. We're trying to make sure that we have consistency in our pipelines, whether it's a good economy or a bad economy, whether people feel that they have lots of money or not much money. Like, we need to make sure that we can understand buyer behavior and start to, in a roundabout way, manipulate what needs to happen so that we know we are giving ourselves and our business the very best chance at growth as people come through our processes. Because as you grow as a team, because once you have this process in place and it's working well and you're doing the legwork, now's the moment to start looking at time buyback. And this is where you start to bring in automation, possibly AI, some kind of team members potentially. Team members are not going to stick around if your pipeline is inconsistent, if they don't know if someone's going to convert or not, if they have to do things outside of their expectations. They need to have a nice framework. They are there to be a team member, not to run your business for you. And that's something really important. And actually, one of the biggest benefits of having a small business is that you can bring people in. You can absolutely empower them to have more exposure to new experiences and actually feel like a big part of something rather than a tiny part. You can provide them with more flexibility in kind of how they approach work, and you can provide them proximity to you as the owner. But you can only do those things if you have a system set up that predictably, you know what's going to happen, you know what the revenue looks like at the end of each month on average, and the team member knows how they're going to hit their KPIs each month. The one thing I would add to all of this is when we look at our client acquisition or that prospect journey, there is one other thing that we want to take into consideration. This is a really important one, and this is referrals. If you have people who are already in your program who are an ideal client, you want to ask early and you want to ask often, who else do you know that would benefit from this process? Because we want to do this not only when they join, but we want to do this at frequent points throughout, because we want them to keep validating their own buying decision, because that's going to help with the lifetime value of them as a client. But it's also going to give you direct access with the power of authority from that person to other people just like them. Those people are the exception. They don't need to go through all the nurture. They don't need to go through the entry point on the front door. These guys, your referral friends, they're coming in the back door. They've got a special VIP section. They're going straight to the front row, and you are going to serve them on a call and convert them at the earliest possible moment, as long as they fit the criteria that we know we need for our ideal client. We want to set up a strong referral scheme to encourage people to do this. And we absolutely, as an absolute minimum, want to be asking people for referrals when they sign up at the end of their first month, and at any other moments when they're looking to re-sign, because you can financially incentivize them by offering them a slight discount off of their re-signs, but you can also help them to validate that decision. Like, I've just resigned for 6 months and I've referred 2 of my friends. We're going to make sure that we all come together and do well. Like, I wouldn't refer somebody myself personally to something if I didn't believe in it. And that then shows the importance of the coaching aspect. You have to make sure you have a good process, a good end result, because if you stop getting referrals, it would indicate that you're probably not delivering a great result on the back end. This also is a great evaluation tool as you continue to grow and you go through that time buyback process. And let's say you bring in a coach. Well, if you see that on average, whilst you were managing the coaching, you were re-signing 60, 70, 80% of your clients, and all of a sudden a coach has come in and your re-signs have dropped to 30% or below, all of a sudden you can tell there's a problem in the back end. It allows you to use that data as an evaluation tool. It allows you to incentivize the coach to be able to earn additional income if they're asking themselves for referrals. And it also makes sure that it holds everyone across the team accountable to make sure that they are prioritizing client results and focusing in on how can I help at every possible moment through the business. Hopefully this is helpful. There is loads of information in here. We have some in-depth trainings that go into this in more depth. If you would like these trainings, drop me a message either on email or on social media with the word podcast, and I will drop you out a training that talks through how to collect this data in much more depth. That in itself is about a 45 to 60-minute training that I ran last year. More than happy to share that with you as an audience. If you have any questions at all, I love hearing from you. Please be sure to reach out to me. So you can either go to allanmiles.com, find all of my socials on there. You can email me at allan@allanmiles.com if you want to drop me an email directly. Please be sure to leave us a review. I really appreciate any comments and any feedback on this podcast. We have some great guests coming up over these next few weeks. We're going to be going deep into really important areas, still focusing on business, on a mindset. I hope this has been good for you guys. I look forward to seeing you soon.